Welcome to the Human Nature Channel. I'm your host, mtamsula, and what am I doing here? Well, it's Tuesday night once again here at my dad's farm garage, also known as Pest Control Central. By 4:30 in the afternoon, I am up here and I'm all settled in. I'm sitting at the table behind me. I got a cup of coffee. Dad's sitting across from me. He's got a cup of coffee. We're talking. And then he says, "We got mice in the house." I'm like, "Oh, yeah." He's like, "Yeah." What had happened was, in the kitchen, there's a silverware drawer. And he pulled it out, and he was going through it looking for some utensil. And he's looking, he's like, "Uh-oh. Mouse poop." And enough mouse poop to indicate 2 mice. I said, "Oh." Because when I came upstairs, in the laundry room, I noticed that there was a towel spread across the washer and the dryer, and there's all of these kitchen utensils spread across it. He's like, "Yeah, I washed them all." And he's like, "Yesterday, in that empty drawer, I put a set mousetrap, closed it." He said, "I caught one of those mice." He said, "I'm pretty sure there's a second one. So tonight, the trap is reset and it's in there, in the drawer, and don't go in that drawer unless you need a mouse." I'm like, "Okay, Dad." And then he's like, "That reminds me of this mouse one time, about 25 years ago." Okay. And he's like, he was in the living room, sitting in his easy chair watching TV. And Mom was on the couch sleeping. And she had her hand, well, I have to hold it up, but she kind of had her hand just like lightly closed, like sort of up here, right? So anyway, Dad's watching TV and he glances over and he notices that there's a mouse on Mom's foot. And it's crawling up her leg, goes all the way up, and it goes into her hand like this, right? And it pokes its nose out and it's looking around, right? And Dad is looking at this and he's like, "That's the last straw. That mouse has to go." So he sets a mouse trap, right? And he puts it in the basement. Now, the way he liked to do it, for some strange reason, is he liked to take a small square of bacon with a little bit of peanut butter on it, and then he'd put it on the plate on the mouse trap, and he'd tie it down with a little bit of fishing line. It's like, okay, take care of that mouse, right? Well, he checks the mouse trap the next day. The bait is missing. He's like, huh. Tries it again the next day. Same thing. This goes on for a couple of days, but he's thinking. He's like, okay. The only thing he can picture is that the mouse gets in there and it starts licking the peanut butter and just licking what's on that plate, right? It licks. And after a while, the fishing line gets a little loose. He just keeps at it. He's got all night, right? Eventually, he makes off with the piece of bacon. So Dad's thinking, "I know what I'll do." Takes a toothpick, right? And he's got that mouse trap. And what he does on the toothpick, he puts his little piece of bacon with peanut butter on it. And then in the plate on the mouse trap where you normally put the bait, there's a tiny little slide, and he puts the toothpick up there like that. So he puts the mouse trap down in the basement. Next day he goes down there. He caught that mouse because the mouse had to actually reach up the stick to grab the bacon and peanut butter, and end of mouse. I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, Dad took out a mouse with a canopy. Well, I hope Starless Mysteries cats like that story. So anyway, how about some Las Vegas shooting truth community yak, because that's what you're here for. we are still talking about the long, hard fall of a way above average guy. And a lot of it comes down to what did Stephen Paddock know at any given time. Last week, under my last video, Eric Peters posted a comment. It was succinct, and I'd like to share it with you. Eric, on the narrative hugger concept, I don't consider myself to be a narrative hugger. I think we can all agree that the timeline of Campos is a key element of the narrative, but it is highly likely that Campos is lying and that MGM and law enforcement are complicit in this lie, if not the instigators. Campos' statement is contradicted by the security dispatchers as well as the nanny. It does not provide an explanation for what happened at 9:59. We have no audio evidence supporting the shots at Campos through the door. The video shown by Nightline, showing him on the ground floor at 9:46, was a reenactment. The story about his presence in the foyer at the crucial time, which tells us he avoided detection during the long walk there, but was shot as soon as he exited while Paddock was already firing out the window, is hardly credible, as it is littered with coincidences. I am a narrative doubter in the sense that it appears to me that certain elements of it are obviously untrue. I am not doubting the fact that all shots were fired from the rooms towards the venue and that people died and were injured as reported. Was Paddock the sole perpetrator? He either was or he wasn't. Me. Good, I'm glad you liked the video. You know, YouTube is still not emailing me comment notifications. I wonder why. Anyway, I don't consider myself a narrative hugger either, whatever it means. I just read over your comment and thought it was an excellent summation of where we are right now with the LVS. I may read this in a future video. There is no explanation for what happened at 9:59, and the point is we should have one. There is no good excuse for all the fogginess concerning Campos's movements. Fogginess is synonymous with cover-up. I like the idea of being a narrative doubter. When you hear narrative hugger, consider the source. Paddock as sole perpetrator or Paddock as participant. Consider this on page 50 of the FIT report. At the very least, two eyewitnesses, Cruz and Torres, despite the differences in what they say, place Paddock out and about on September 29th. Yet, the end note says, detectives have evidence that shows Paddock arriving alone at the Mandalay Bay Valet on September 28th at approximately 21:46 hours and not leaving the property until September 30th at 0100 hours. Okay, so any talk of Paddock moving around on September 29th, even if it's just inside the hotel, gets conveniently memory holed. Where was he and who was the woman who was happy and nice? Narrative doubter is the way to go. So where does this leave us? One last thing about the Locke interrogation report. After thinking some more about it, the opening and closing of the doors over a 6-day period could have simply been to cover comings and goings of any nice and happy playmates. To me, Paddock acted as if he were being watched because he couldn't know for sure. But I've come to the conclusion he needn't have bothered. Nobody was watching, at least not on the hot SOS level. So then we're down to the more bizarre claims that came out of the Las Vegas shooting. The one from ISIS that Paddock had converted to Islam 6 months before the massacre. Did you know ISIS even called Paddock by a new name? Abu Abdul Bar al-Amriki. ISIS named him in their weekly online magazine Al-Naba and said that Brother Abu stationed himself in a room on the 32nd floor of a hotel overlooking the concert and opened fire continuously on the crowds using 23 firearms and more than 2,000 bullets and died, may God accept him, after running out of ammunition. One can see immediately ISIS doesn't have its facts straight, so it's easy to conclude they are full of shit. We can dismiss whatever they say as an attempt to make themselves look fearsome on the cheap. Yet, even though I seriously doubt ISIS had anything to do with the LVS, there is always the outside possibility that Paddock, in a delusional state, really lost his marbles and became a type of lone wolf killer who self-radicalized. The encrypted messaging app Telegram is how Al-Naba communicates with their subscribers. See, because of another thing Paddock brought and left behind on a laptop, I'm not 100% convinced that the hard drive removed from one of the laptops contained problematic tax information about the Paddock family, as Eric Paddock suggested. Now, the missing hard drive could have had information on tax evasion. It's a reasonable explanation, especially if Stephen Paddock had been losing a lot of money since 2014. He might have had reason to cheat on his taxes. But at this point, we have no idea what was truly on the missing hard drive. So, Stephen, why even bother bringing it? Why destroy it as one of your final acts? It is the biggest black hole in the Las Vegas shooting story. Eric Paddock, in talking about the possibility Stephen had disposed of evidence relating to tax fraud, said that maybe he cared about us after all. Unless what was on the hard drive was some kind of terrorist propaganda or something else. Eric, if Stephen really cared about you and your mother, or still had the ability to care, he wouldn't have done this. Somewhere along the line, he lost that ability. Strangely enough, Stephen Paddock was just as heartless as any ISIS killer looking at his victims, and after a certain point, he's no different than ISIS in terms of result. That's why I think some people wanted to take ISIS's statements of responsibility at face value, because they want to believe this was an ISIS/jihadist attack, no matter what evidence you show them to the contrary. It's like John E. Cullenhoover. The madness of one man isn't enough for him. He's got to take a contingent of Saudi Air National Guardsmen and make them all nuts too. Me, I try to keep my suppositions as simple as possible. That's the difference between me and Colonel Kurtz here. Outside of problem-solving calculations, I'm trying to figure out what was going on inside Stephen Paddock's mind, especially during the 6 days he was at Mandalay Bay. Was he LARPing? Live-action role-playing that he was a terrorist as he skulked around the premises? He wasn't a stupid man. He had to have known about the Pulse nightclub shooting from a year earlier and how it was a genuine terrorist attack. He certainly knew ISIS existed in the world and had to have known there'd be an automatic comparison between what he was going to do and them. Did that factor into his thinking? Did he want ISIS to say in so many words, "Love your work"? Was that his motive? If it was sick beyond belief, and I do think Paddock was sick beyond belief, so it's possible. Did Paddock come to hate America? Maybe he was a secret America hater all along. Nobody has ever said Stephen Paddock loved his country. I'm taking a second look at the ISIS angle, even if it was all only inside of Paddock's head. Keep this in mind. MGM Resorts International desperately wanted the Route 91 Harvest Festival massacre to have been designated an ISIS terrorist attack, because then they could have claimed an exemption from any liability because a terrorist attack isn't something that can be predicted, and they wouldn't have had to pay anybody a dime. When it comes to this American resort town in the desert, where you can see guys walking around in Arab dress, Middle Eastern terrorism is a theme that just doesn't go away easily. And Paddock got the attention of ISIS, whether he intended to or not. So on that cheery note, there's always something interesting here in my dad's garage. What can I show you today? Well, obviously we are outside my dad's farm garage, but what I have to show you right now is the pig pen. Yes, many years ago, we raised pigs. Now, it's been a long time. The building is now used for storage. But as far as pig pens go, it's still pretty nice. How many pig pens do you know got a new roof? Huh? Now, if you walk around the back here, this is where the pen itself was. Right here, we've got a bricked up opening, and the pigs used to come out there, and in this little space right here, there were railings and mud, and pigs were happy, to a point. We use it for storage now. I'll tell you what, unless you grew up around pigs, you don't realize how nice they are as animals. They're smart as a dog, and they can be really affectionate. Yeah, almost hate to say pork, the other white meat, but that's the way it is. Now up here, see that pole? There used to be a street light on top of it. And it got struck by lightning. Always something interesting here up at my dad's farm. Well, I think I have everything I need. I got a pair of scissors. They're sticky. I have a bowl of Eni-chung Japanese udon soup. Oh, I love udon soup. Oh, it's so good, except no substitutes. I tried an off-brand udon soup one time when they were out of Eni-chungs down at the store. The only kind I'll eat. And I have what I think is a toilet brush with a very, very short handle. Maybe it's something else, because if this is to clean the commode, half your arm is going to be going down in it. Not very appealing. Help me out here, Irv. It's 2:30, actually later. Ran late. No song tonight. I'll try and fit one in. Irv! Oh. What's that, Irv? I'm lucky you're here to carry me. Whatever you say. Time for your close-up, pal.